I have an idea. Let us return to the past. Greetings, chromatic warriors. Long ago, 1994, I began painting orcs. I was but a wee grot. Eventually, time went on, although it moved slower in those days. We come to the year 1997, which saw the release of the pewter copy of Nazdreg Ug Urdgrub, Warlord of the Bad Moons. This is kind of a secondary Gazgul, but just as important. Sales often dictate the importance of certain figures within the fiction, but old Nazdreg still remains a hero in my heart. So today, I wanted to go back and recreate that classic scheme that I came up with little to no guidance. I was given a handful of identical orcs and grots, and I bought this book. I think I raked leaves for that. But anyways, I said to my brother, who was forcing Warhammer on me, which clan should I go with? And he said, Snakebites. I said, cool. What colors are those? And he said, blue, red, and green. So here we are. Traditionally, Nazdreg is a bad moon, but I'm making him mine. Let's get into it. Waaagh. To get it rolling real quick, I have a base coat of dragon red laid down. Red is going to be the most dominant color on my Orks mega armor. But coming over that dragon red, I'm just laying down a highlight of pure red, spraying at a downward angle, hitting those upward facing sidings of the model. Yeah, just a quick workup of dragon red and pure red. The next step is to break up the scheme with some of these smaller accent colors. I'll be using blue and yellow. I have other colors to use for the silver and for the bone tones and the skin, but yeah, mainly the clan colors that the orcs are painting with, blue, red, and yellow. So just kind of want to create the map of what will be blue and yellow to begin. Just laid down some Moonbeam yellow to set the foundation for the truest of blues. I'll be using Imperial Navy on some of these various bits, pulling out some blue moons. With the blue and yellow sorted out, I want to start detailing things in, rendering some similar shadows to the red. So I'm taking Sunburst Ochre, sweeping that down to shade the yellow. I think I'll tackle all the yellow before moving to the blue because the blue exists on top of the yellow in most cases. Continuing to lift up that yellow, I've added a little bit of white into my Moonbeam yellow, brightening it up ever so slightly, applying a smaller portion of highlight, picking out the rivets, and here and there I might have to jump back to Moonbeam yellow, smooth something out, highlight a rivet in the downward facing angles, down in the shadow of his knee pad right here. I'll just reduce my highlight to a pure Moonbeam yellow. To finish off the yellow areas, so firstly, some of the glyphs need a little emphasis. I have the space to kind of double line, get a slight slim highlight running around the stomach plate, at least. I worked a little bit around the moon as well. Sorry, this moon's all over the moon on the knee. And now adding just a little bit more white into that Moonbeam yellow. I can come in with my final highlight. Yeah, just the slightest amount. I want to make sure that I have a nice saturated result as well, so I'm sure to be working in multiple thin coats for smoothness. The first color I'll lay down in stepping up the blues will be royal blue. Laying it in just like so. Going more broad with this pass, just like with that first lift up of yellow. I don't want to go too sharp just yet. For the third boost to the blues, I'll come in with Arctic Gem. Very reduced coverage. I'm doing my edge highlighting here, pulling out some scratches. There's a little bit sculpted into the model, but I'll also add my own little scratches and dents here and there. For that final kick to the blue, I've added a small amount of white into the Arctic Gem. And it's just tiny dots and slashes at this point in very targeted areas, bringing everything, very, very sharply to these points of brightness. I just want you to notice the equation going on, the amount of this blue band, for example, that is covered by shadow and midtone versus the highlights, and the quickness of the progression to create that kind of harder light situation, that kind of deeper, more dramatic contrast. Works very well on 35mm miniatures. Continuing to break up this confusing body. I don't want to overcomplicate things. I'll just bring some Iron Hall Gray in. You can see I've picked out all of the tubes with that. And then, having added a little bit of white to make a lighter gray, I'll just follow along with the texture of these pipings and greaves. I don't mind if I get paint into the crevice, but you can see how it, as I lift my brush, it tapers off, almost like painting hair. Oh, hi there. I hope you're enjoying this video. I'm more than just a set of hands. But when I am just a set of hands, I use them to type useful links in the description down below. So please give those a browsing. You may find something of use to you. I might seem a little crazy to be painting non-metallic metal on these old school orcs, but yeah, that's the way I like it. Taking a little bit of that old style, combining it with some of my new knowledge. So I'm taking Gray Castle and black, wet blending them together to start, and there are a lot of details on this gun. I'm going to ignore them for the most part, just getting some general waves of light happening. I want this kind of linear style to the reflections, just like so. It doesn't have to be pretty and perfect, it's just orcs after all. I'll start establishing some of my general gradients between the light and shadow in the upper area, pulling in a large amount of Castle Gray and sweeping them together. It's so I can get a great depth of shadow. I want a wide range from my light to dark color to create that reflective effect. And I can sharpen things up after I have these general reflections laid in place. I don't have that amount of space to work on the hydraulics, so there I'll just mix and match and just paint these linear reflections in place, creating a chrome-like shaft. Okay, a rough foundation in place, no problem. Come in with some Gray Castle. Just begin picking out some edges and paying attention to these upward facing angles. Yeah, this little band of riveted attachment. I want to pick that out. Push this reflection right up close to that seam. But there are already some kind of pathways laid out from that wet blend, and there's a little bit, I am coming in with a brighter color, so I'm adding more reflective information. But from that wet blend, I'm able to capitalize on things a little bit, kind of turning that gray a little lighter or darker where it needs to be. So lightening with Gray Castle, and on the other side of that I can be sweeping shadows in, just adding a little bit of black to that Gray Castle, even if if I have space to wet blend, like right here, well then I will. Whatever I have room for, I will do. Checking back in, I'm still working on the non-metallic metal, but it's been sharpened up a little bit, so I just wanted to share some progress, and you can see that I've got a much smaller brush in action. And yeah, I just wanted to capture this because, you know, now with the edge highlights and this kind of starkness and great depth of shadow, that non-metallic metal look starts to become more prominent, even if it is just a quicker take. Okay, next I have some diluted speed paint. A little bit goes a long way. Do my best to my breast. Wow. I'll do my best to take a brush load, and as you can see, just spread it out as far as I can. Always working against that wet edge, so there's an even membrane as the speed paint starts to dry. You don't want anything to be pulling awkwardly. You don't want weird surface tensions coming up, so always work against that wet edge. Kind of select one item at a time and encase it. Back in action for some final touches on that steel. Just want to pull some areas back up out of that washy murk. Just reapplying some of those sharpening edge highlights and gradients, blending here and there. But yeah, just kind of roughly assembling my non-metallic metals, washing them together, and then pulling back up out of that what I see fit. And once I'm satisfied with my gradients, pun intended, wow, I'll come back in for just some final white dots and slashes, just making sure to lock that ultimate brightness and maximum depth into the equation, create a nice reflective mimicry. Behold the cylinder, 'tis but a simple shape, but when made shiny, we have some things to talk about. So first of all, I'm starting off over a base coat of Sunburst ochre and black. Now I'm coming in with pure Sunburst ochre and locking in my reflective channels of light. So we have the upward facing angle that I'm blending in place, and I could probably pull that a little bit further around the top of the barrel, but we'll also have this secondary reflection, the bounce light coming up off of the ground. I don't know, I refer to these as channels of light, just a way to make things look shiny. One wants to pass through a roller coaster of extreme depths and extreme brightnesses. So just a few successive diluted layers of Sunburst ochre. Get that blended in place. Now let's also get a little zazzy and just pull a tiny reflective line across this deeper channel of light. Let me just get that nice and saturated. And I want to pick out the small breathing holes in the barrel and edge highlight with the Sunburst ochre as well. And now, escalating in lightness, tightness, and brightness, I've added a little bit of space dust into the Sunburst ochre, and I already have those channels of light laid out. It's not going to look perfect after just one pass. You're working with such minute amounts of paint. You want to build on the saturation very gradually. It gives you a lot more control as you're working gradually up to these peaks. You can see how I start with a somewhat bold line and blend around it to smooth it out. Just many touches of that diluted mixture. I want to attend to some edge highlights and picking out the little breathing holes once again. But yeah, now it's getting somewhere after around the third pass, getting a nice level of saturation. I'll just keep going until it's smooth. And to finalize, just a thin, very straight. You can see me lifting and dropping the brush to ensure I get a nice straight and fine line. But yeah, just finishing that off with some space dust. Very nice. Moving along, I'm going to allow myself the pleasure of painting the face. Love how this green orky face is seated amongst all these colors. But it started with a base coat of Temple Gate Teal. Now I'm coming in with the appropriately named Greenskin, covering the muzzle, these protrusions, and as the chin presses forward, make that area of greenskin more broad. I've also base coated the lip in the darkness. I'll be highlighting that the same, just moving up to Temple Gate Teal, but being sure to apply a much more cracked and textured approach, so the lip appears to be a little darker. I guess orcs are darker on the inside, opposed to us pink humans. Then, following along in a similar fashion, I'll lay down some greenskin, just being sure not to cover that previous pass of textures, letting that darkness show through in the crevices. And I'm also going to continue popping the face up with some Emerald Forest. Apply this in very limited amounts. It does have a very textured face, so I want to make sure that I'm acknowledging those textures at this point. That previous layer, I don't want that maximum depth of shadow showing in the area I'm painting, for example. But allowing that to show in the smile lines of his big toothy grin, some of those lower creases. Well, that's good practice. Finish off the facial features, coming in with Patagon Pine on that crusty lip. It's a nice seafoam green lift. I want it to differ a little bit from the facial skin. Speaking of the face, take some space dust, paint in that eye. Oh yeah, orcs usually have red eyes. Maybe I'd like that. Okay. Anyways, I'll switch that over to red. It is tradition after all. I would keep it, but the rest of my orcs also have red eyes. But you can see I'm just pulling up some of these little bumps and irregularities in the orc facial features. Just some pure diluted space dust, touching very gently, giving it all a very gradual lift up. It is that time. You are now entering the bone zone. Okay, so first of all, you can see I've picked out some brown bits, using Bootstrap brown for that first coat, and then building up on top of that some leather brown. Nice tan lift. I'm using my big brush, working in broad strokes, pressing lightly so I don't overwhelm any of these details. And to highlight the bones up, you can see I've already done a little work on the teeth. It's going to be a little two-part action because I want to use the big brush and the small brush. You can see how this is, just like with the leather brown, it's helping me get things in place, giving me more control, cover this broad area, laying the second pass down on this skull over here. It's going to take a gradual accumulation because of the dilution. Just want you to see the kind of difference as things slowly build up. And when it comes to the bitty brush, you guessed it, the finer stuff. Picking out the brow bones, the bridge of the nose, all these little nooks and crannies and details from which your face grows. I will be applying a diluted mixture as well, just like with the upper dome, making sure things build gradually and smoothly. Finally coloring the base in, and it makes for a much different view. Now that I have the colors out, because I'm using the same colors I used on the bone tone, I'll start wet blending like so. It's just leather brown, and then I'm adding barren Dune, and what I want to do is create a gradual escalation in brightness as the base moves forward. It creates a little bit of momentum. It's a fun thing to do on a perfectly flat space like so, rendering it as the ancients intended. Take some of that Bootstrap brown for the rear and just mash it all together. With the wet blend dry, I will take to some dry brushing. First, applying barren Dune to the front half, we'll call it, and then a little touch of the leather brown over the rear. And then with all parts of the base surely dry, I'll take some diluted dark wood and just spread out a nice thin membrane, being sure to work it into every little nook and cranny so we get a nice even dry. Every good boss has a loot sack hanging at his hip, full of freshly pulled teeth. So, over a base coat of Tainted garden mixed with black just to make a deeper version, laying some pure Tainted garden over what I assume is his orky wallet. Hooray, I'm working on the red. This is another little piece that I was greatly looking forward to, just like that green skin. So on top of that airbrushing, I've started to just want to correct some of my work. The plan was to do this last. I have all these little details to pick out, and I can go and kind of cover any mistakes, get rid of my tracks with this all-encompassing red bodysuit. So I have fiery vermilion for some of these deeper areas, right down in the orky armpit. And then I'm also bringing Angelic red into play. It's a nice kind of salmon-y tone. It's a good lift for your reds. I always find myself mixing orange, red, and varying amounts of white together. I'm sure I'll boost this Angelic red up a little bit further, but this is a nice shift on top of that fiery vermilion. Further still in the crimson progression. Good name for a band. Okay, medium name for a band. So what I've done here is added a little bit of white in with the Angelic red, creating a nice kind of pinkish, a nice salmon tone like I was talking about. Got a good, pretty much a flesh shade going for the red highlight. And yeah, just working around in very small amounts, picking out the corners and edges, every little rivet. Here and there, I'll be blending with this color where the metal, or sorry, where the armor kind of flattens out. A little highlight would be catching there, across the top of the shoulders as well. I've got a little bit to work up in there, but yeah, just pushing that red a little bit further. Of the Deluxe targeting device over a base coat of the darkness, coming in with some Greenskin, just creating that little gathering of brightness towards the bottom. Not too bad. Just take a little diluted the darkness, sweep it back over in the opposite direction. Maybe grab a little bit more of that Greenskin, sweep it together. I want the center of this to be somewhat dark for the following detail. This next part will be a little bit challenging, but that's what we're here for. Push ourselves. So it starts off with a small plus sign. Very delicate work. So once I have that plus sign in place, to draw, oh boy, pressing very lightly, just a very fine line at the tip of each of these ends. Coming along, it's a little chunky, but that's okay. Just want to create a circle in the middle. Then very carefully sharpen all these lines, taking some of the darkness and just trying to make these lines a little thinner. Doesn't have to be perfect. See, there we go. It's kind of rounding out as long as everything looks balanced. Let's also drop a dot of the darkness right in the middle. Nice. Then, having added a small amount of white just to brighten up that emerald forest, it needs some dimension to this. It needs to look like the little targeting signal is glowing inside of the war gear. So, just needs a little bit of glittering to it. It can't just be that one flat color. It's a little dimension. Yeah, I will brighten that up ever so slightly. Time for that finishing touch. Old school style. I'm going to go across the model, just lay down a little diluted white. Kind of saved this as a final round. I can go across and check my work, make sure everything is looking just right. What a perfect model. Look at that smile. I also want to keep these highlights limited to the upper area. Just a note on value control. As the eye creeps upwards, if you look at the edges of this model, there is a gradual rise in brightness. And yeah, that's just a pleasing look. I think it helps to move the eyes upward on the model, creates the impression of a shadow. You can see the white highlights coming out on the skulls as well. So everything is getting an extra bit of attention, and where needed, that final touch of white. Ah, what a beautiful and old snazzy Nazi, we're calling him just as of now. And by we, I mean myself, the single guy sitting alone in his studio, thinking of names. This was great fun to bring together, and canny viewers may notice I didn't cover the details on the flag. I feel like this video is starting to run a little long after I edited all the footage together, and I also want to take time to celebrate the history of orcs as well as my own affection for them, so I'll save those thoughts for the next video. We will continue on Nazdreg, I'll focus on painting that cool freehand, and wax philosophical about the coolness of orcs, something I do on a weekly basis. Alright, let me know how you feel in the comments section down below. Remain unchained.